Someone was behind me. A hand slammed against the side window of the minibus, and the date was from 14 years ago. Our minibus, traveling down an old forest road in rural Romania, was carrying 8 university students filled with laughter. It was the last week of spring break, and we were planning to dance until sunrise at a forest rave party organized near Cluj-Napoca. The best part of being a university student was hopping from one party to another with like-minded friends. I guess, being freshmen, we hadn't yet grasped the seriousness of classes or the difficulty of coursework. Let alone worrying about the future, we were living without even thinking about tomorrow. The music was blasting, drinks were spinning in our hands, and we were already getting drunk before even arriving at the party. Only Luca had taken a sip or two and stopped, because he was the one driving. He was both the leader of our group and one of the organizers of the party. He was more level-headed than the rest of us, outgoing and charming. I'm Alina. Next to me was my best friend Mira. Mira was the excitable type. She was usually in a state of panic. She always felt like she was late for something. In the back seats were Eric, Andre, Sonia, Paul, and Bianca. Sonia and Bianca were childhood friends and practically inseparable. Luca was checking the map on his phone while navigating deeper into the forest, occasionally singing along with the guys shouting songs from the back seat. As the road narrowed, the old trees inside the forest seemed to lean toward us. The surroundings were pitch dark. When we looked outside the side windows, we could only see a deep blackness. I suddenly shivered. It felt like something was about to jump onto the window, and I immediately turned my head. At that exact moment, at the end of a winding hill, a silhouette appeared on the side of the road, illuminated by our headlights. It was a young man, alone. His clothes were covered in dust, his hair stuck to his forehead with sweat, and he was missing one shoe. He looked terrifying. Luca slowed down. I warned him not to stop, but I guess the fact that we were 8 people and he was alone made Luca think he couldn't harm us. So he came to a full stop. The minibus fell silent. Mira whispered, "Did his car break down? What's he doing here at this hour?" Luca rolled down the window. "Hey man, are you okay?" The guy replied in a hoarse voice. "My car broke down. My phone died. Is there a settlement nearby?" Luca thought for a second, then shrugged. "We're heading to a party nearby. Hop in, we'll take you as far as we can." The guy silently got into one of the back seats. We didn't ask his name. He didn't tell. We kept driving. But from that moment on, something changed in the minibus. The music was turned back on, but no one was laughing anymore. The new passenger in the back didn't speak a word. He sat with his head bowed, hands resting on his knees, eyes fixed on the road. About 20 minutes later, we turned onto a narrow dirt road deep in the forest. Our phones had already lost reception. Luca checked the map, but the screen was frozen. "GPS is down," he said. At that exact moment, the minibus jolted. It felt like the front right tire ran over something. We had to stop. Luca and a few others got out. I didn't want to stay in the van, nor did I have the courage to venture into the endless darkness. But staying in the van with that strange man scared me. So I got out too. I couldn't believe my eyes. A long, thick, rusty nail-like thing had pierced the front right tire. What shocked us was not that the nail was there, but that it was deliberately placed. 4 nails were embedded in the ground at regular intervals, heads buried, sharp ends facing upward. It was certain one of them would pierce a tire, and one did. Everyone except Mira got out of the van. Someone set a trap here, Luca said quietly. A strange unease washed over everyone. No one said it out loud, but those nails felt like a warning that something terrible was about to happen. We all looked at each other. That's when a scream came from inside the minibus. We rushed inside. Mira had curled into a corner. She was crying. "Someone was behind me," she said, trembling. "They touched me. Their hands were ice cold," she added. We all got into the minibus and looked around, but it was empty. Luca and Eric walked around the minibus, but they couldn't see anyone either. The strange part was, the passenger, he was gone. While we were checking the tire, we had all been standing right next to the minibus, and the man we picked up never got out. Not once. Mira kept crying. We were all extremely tense. We tried to calm her down. We had given her water. I was holding her hands, trying to calm her down, thinking maybe she was just hallucinating from the alcohol, when suddenly, a hand slammed against the side window of the minibus. It was so strong the van shook. We all screamed and jumped back. We locked the doors. Everyone clung to the person next to them. This time, the same sound came from the back of the van, and it shook again. Everyone was screaming. The panic grew. Phones still had no signal. Moonlight barely filtered through the trees. This time, the whole van started to shake. I closed my eyes, held Mira tightly, and began to pray. The shaking stopped. We were all frozen, waiting for another hit on the window. 5 minutes passed. When we were sure no one was around, Eric said, "Who's coming with me?" "I'm going to look around. That guy we picked up must be messing with us, and it's not funny anymore. He needs to be taught a lesson." Luca and Andre agreed to get out. Eric started shouting,
"Hey, you! If this is a joke, it's not funny at all. Come out already."
But this wasn't a joke. Luca noticed a piece of paper on the ground. I'm sure it wasn't there before. One of the 7 of us would have seen it. Luca quietly bent down and picked it up. They got back into the minibus, and Luca held up the paper he had found. It was an old piece of paper, written in pencil. "You are invited, too." Below the note was a hand-drawn map, and just ahead, a structure deep in the woods was marked. A forest house, or a cabin. We took a vote about whether or not to follow the map. The group split in 2, those who wanted to stay in the minibus, Sonia, Paul, Bianca, and Eric. Some said the forest wasn't safe, but staying inside the van didn't feel any safer either. Luca, Mira, Andre, and I decided to follow the map. Maybe we could find a way out of this. We took flashlights and plunged into the forest. As we went deeper into the forest, the strange sounds grew louder, and we felt even more uneasy. Mira and I walked slowly, arms linked, carefully scanning our surroundings. After about 20 minutes, we reached the location on the map. There was indeed a house, but it looked abandoned. The door was open, inside was dark. Luca led the way, Andre was in the back, and we entered in line. It smelled like mold. We felt drenched from the dampness. All of us had flashlights. We used our flashlights to light up different corners around us. There were traces of melted candles inside the cabin. The floorboards were burned in some places. In a corner, a woman's dress. Next to it, a teddy bear covered in nails. Suddenly, Mira screamed. We all turned our flashlights to where she was pointing. Names were carved into the walls, as if scratched in, with stone, nails, or a knife. Paul, 2011. Bianca, 2011. Eric, 2011. Sonia, 2011. We froze. Mira shouted with a shaky voice. This is impossible. They're still in the minibus. Who wrote this? How did they know we'd come here? Why are only their names listed? What's going to happen to them?" She fired off question after question. Yes, the names were there. And the date was from 14 years ago. I was trembling. Luca was trying to stay calm. But Mira's questions were echoing in my own head too. Suddenly, Luca shouted, "Hey, look over there!" and pointed to the wall on our left. The entire wall was covered in scribbles and markings, as if someone had written something madly and then scratched it all out. But one sentence was still visible. "Do not speak when he arrives. If you look, he'll take you." When Luca read those words, something changed inside the cabin. The air grew heavy, the ceiling creaked, and then we heard footsteps from the attic. Slow, rhythmic, bare feet. Then a whisper. "Luca, Andre." We shined our lights upward. Someone was hanging upside down in the attic opening, hair dangling to the floor. We all screamed, and then we ran. As we ran, I must have tripped over something and fell to the ground. For a second, I swear I felt someone grab my leg. I started screaming and crying uncontrollably. Mira froze for a moment, then reached down, grabbed my hand, and pulled me up. Running madly, screaming, it was like the forest had changed. The trees seemed rearranged. The paths had disappeared. I could hear footsteps behind me, but the screaming had stopped. I didn't dare look back. I didn't want to lose momentum. When the footsteps got even closer, I quickly turned my head slightly to sneak a look. Oh God. There was no one there. I was running all alone, but I kept hearing those footsteps right behind me. It felt like someone was about to grab me by the shoulders. I ran even faster. And then, at some point, I reached the van. But it was empty. The headlights were on, the doors were open, but no one was there. I jumped into the minibus and locked all the doors immediately. I checked my phone, and suddenly I had signal again. I immediately called the police. I shared my location. I hid under the seats and stayed there until the police arrived. About 30 minutes later, flashing police lights lit up the area. I came out. I was the only one left from the group. Crying, I told them my friends had disappeared. I couldn't explain what had happened. Police units spread through the forest to search for my friends. They searched until the first light of morning. They only found Mira, unconscious at the base of a tree. Days passed. No one else was found. Only Luca's torn t-shirt. Mira. She was admitted to the hospital. During treatment, they feared she might be triggered by memories of that night. So they didn't let her see me. Me? Since that day, I've been at home. Every night, a hand taps on my window, but no one else in the house hears it. For months, I kept that night to myself, never speaking a word. Until I heard Mira's last sentence the other day. She leaned into her doctor and whispered in his ear. He got in the van, but he never got out.
"Help!" I started yelling. I tried to open it. I was sure I hadn't locked it. I couldn't breathe. Even telling this still makes my stomach churn. I don't know how much of what I experienced was real and how much was just my brain playing tricks on me. But some details were so vivid that I still find myself back in those moments when I close my eyes at night. I had planned a 2-day camping trip near Arrow Lake in the northern part of British Columbia. Silence, the forest, solitude. It was exactly what I needed to clear my mind. The first day was perfect. I spent the night in the tent I set up by the lake, surrounded by nature, peaceful and calm. On the second day, I heard that the weather was going to turn and wind was coming, so I decided to pack up and head back. I drank my coffee that morning and sat for a while looking out at the lake. In the afternoon, I took down my tent, grabbed my backpack, and followed a trail through the forest until I reached the paved road. It took me an hour to get there, and the sun was starting to set. There was no sound of cars, no people, just silence. I was looking for a good spot to hitchhike when I noticed a silhouette further down the road. A woman, standing still on the roadside. As I got closer, I could make out her appearance more clearly. Tall, thin, she was wearing a white dress, faded and slightly stained with mud, with a bluish tint. She had no shoes on. Her bare feet looked glued to the asphalt. Her hair was long and straight, covering most of her face. There was a green hair tie around her wrist. It was strange. I approached and greeted her. She simply said, "Rain is coming." "Yes. Are you stuck out here?" I asked. "I'm here, waiting for him. He didn't come," she replied. I had no idea who she was waiting for, how long she'd been waiting, or where she was going. Honestly, I didn't care. Her voice was cold, flat, almost robotic. I nodded. "I see," I said. We started waiting together. Neither of us spoke. We didn't ask anything, just stood there silently, her face always turned toward the ground. About 5 minutes later, an old Chevrolet pulled up beside us, driven by an elderly man. "Where are you two headed?" he asked with a smile. He looked to be in his 70s, but still had energy. He had a warm, friendly air about him. "I was camping. I should probably head to the nearest town," I said. The woman said, "I'm waiting for him. He didn't come." The old man didn't seem to pay much attention to what she said. I got in the front seat and the woman climbed into the back. She stared out the rear window, or at least she turned her head in that direction. We hit the road. At first it was quiet. Then the man introduced himself. His name was Walter. Then he started talking. "These roads can be a bit dangerous at night. You've got bears, maybe even cougars. Camping alone, huh? Takes guts." I smiled and turned to the woman. "What about you? Were you camping too, or just visiting?" She didn't respond. Her eyes were still staring blankly into nothing. Walter seemed a little tense. "Not much of a talker, is she?" I said. Further down the road, Walter suddenly changed direction. "My house is right up here, just off the road. You can eat, rest, and head out in the morning. These roads aren't great at night." I hesitated, but it had started raining. "Okay, sure," I agreed. About a mile later, we turned into a small yard. It was modest but fairly well kept. The car stopped. The woman got out without saying a word and walked toward the front door. It was like she already knew the place. Her walk was odd, dragging her feet along the ground. When she reached the door, she stepped aside and waited for Walter to unlock it. Walter opened the door and walked in. She followed, and I came in last, shutting the door behind me. The house was warm and nostalgic, full of old furniture but tidy. Walter lit the fireplace. The woman sat stiffly on a chair. Neither of them spoke. Walter didn't even ask her anything. While he went to the kitchen to prepare dinner, I stood by the fire warming my hands. My back was to the woman. Suddenly, I felt breath on my right ear. I turned around in a panic. She was still sitting. Walter called out, "Dinner's ready." I said to her, "Come on, let's eat." She just shook her head as if to say no. I went to the kitchen. Walter and I began eating and chatting a bit, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling inside. After dinner, Walter showed me a room upstairs where I could sleep. Before getting into bed, I went to the bathroom. While washing my hands, I looked up and there she was in the mirror. Her hair fully covered her face. Her head was right over my right shoulder. I turned around fast, but no one was there. I quickly dried my hands and headed for the door. I tried to open it. I was sure I hadn't locked it, but it wouldn't budge. I struggled with it. "Help!" I started yelling, but no sound came out. It was like an invisible hand was reaching for the back of my neck. Suddenly, the door flew open. I ran straight into the room and slammed the door behind me. I jumped into bed. I shut my eyes tight, but I couldn't get that mirror image out of my head. Eventually, exhaustion took over and I passed out. Night. Around 1:30 a.m., I woke up to my bed shaking. I could hear sounds coming from the attic, footsteps, whispers. "Get out of bed, get out of bed," voices began to chant. I slowly got out of bed and opened the door. I started going down the stairs. A dim light was coming from the kitchen into the living room. I quietly approached. The woman was standing in front of the pantry, slowly opening and closing the door. The same motion, over and over, and she was mumbling something, the same words again and again. She turned to me. Her hair still covered her face. My eyes caught her shadow on the wall, but the shadow wasn't hers. The arms were longer, the head was tilted, the feet were turned inward. Then something happened. The shadow began moving independently from her, but she wasn't moving at all. The shadow on the wall slowly started walking toward me. Her body was still in front of the pantry, but her shadow was right in front of me now. Before I could react, a dark force threw me backward. My shoulder hit the wall, and I fell to the floor. As I tried to get up, my eyes landed on her feet. They were no longer touching the ground. She was slowly rising, completely silent. It was as if an invisible string was lifting her. I will never forget this moment. Her hair parted. I saw her face for the first time, but it wasn't a face. There were no eyes, no nose, just a pitch black void, and her mouth. It wasn't a human mouth. It stretched from ear to ear, rotten, torn open, so wide that if you fell in, you might never come out again. At that moment, a hand grabbed my throat from behind. I couldn't breathe. My eyes locked onto the ceiling light. It was swaying wildly. And then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. I was lying on the couch in the living room. I heard noises from the kitchen. This time, I couldn't bring myself to go in there. Walter called out, "All right, young man, breakfast's ready." I got up. On the edge of the couch, I saw the woman's green hair tie. I walked to the kitchen doorway. "Good morning. Where's the woman? Did she leave?" He looked at me, long and hard, then slowly said, "You came alone?" There was no one in the car, no one in the house. When I first saw you, you were talking to yourself. There was no woman. I shivered. "Oh, and I think you got hungry last night. When I came in this morning, the pantry door was open. You must have forgotten." We ate breakfast without saying much. Walter offered to drive me to the city. When we got to the car, I saw the woman sitting in the back seat. Her face was still hidden. We didn't say a word the whole way. He dropped me off in the city. I thanked him and got out, and after that, I never went camping or hitchhiking again.